On this episode of Office Hours with Dr. Guy, interviews, sampling, and how to structure your lit review. Bring your questions to Office Hours with Dr. Guy. Hi everybody, this is Dr. Guy, and I want to welcome you to Office Hours here in episode 3. I want to thank you for your questions, and for those of you that have responded already, and just, gosh, I mean, the comments have been great so far. Already a little bit of a community is starting to buzz within the comments section, and I just greatly appreciate what you are doing there. I need your questions. I need questions to keep the show going. So regardless of how small or how big the question is, go ahead and post it there so that way I can keep doing this show, this experiment where we are just conquering the dissertation world together. And so I want to welcome you to the show. Let's start answering your questions. Hatham asks, will you consider giving some tips and guidance to materials about sampling anytime soon? Hatham, thank you for the question. Yes, I am considering it, and here we are. And first of all, I hope that I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And yes, I've definitely considered it, and I'd like to talk about it right here and right now. I think the trick is when it comes to sampling, is that we need to follow a guide, a process. And once we are in Chapter 3, I mean, you're asking a Chapter 3 question. Whenever we're dealing with any question that relates to Chapter 3 or the IRB application, we're very fortunate in that every single one of those questions that might come up needs to be backed up. Every statement in in Chapter 3 needs to be backed up by some kind of book, some kind of research manual. And most candidates don't even aren't exposed to research manuals during the course of their program. So I just want to recommend, first of all, a few research manuals for everyone. The first is by Cresswell, and that's called Qualitative Inquiry and Research Design. I think it's choosing among 5 approaches. I think as far as qualitative data, that's one of the best you could possibly use. And there's another one called, I think it's Educational Statistics. You know, I'm going to link it up after I do this episode, and I'll give you the links in the comments section. Leave me your questions about those there. But just to say is that everything you do in Chapter 3 needs to be based upon something that is in some kind of research manual or some kind of statistical research manual. And so if you don't have any of those research manuals, my recommendation is go into the comments section, check out the list of books that I provide, and see if one is applicable to you. Chances are one of those will be useful. If not, go find one that is. But either way, in Chapter 3, you always want to base everything that you do upon what a research manual says. So in your case, you're asking, what about sampling? How do I choose what types of sampling to do? What are the steps of that sampling? How many people do I need to have a representative sample of my population? Or if you're not doing that type of research, how do I just select the people that are going to be involved in the study at all, or the types of data that are going to be involved in the study? And the answer to that question is the research manual will tell you exactly what you need to do. And you need to list in your Chapter 3, what are the individual steps that you're going to do, you're going to undertake to actually do the sampling that the book suggests. And the nice thing is Chapter 3 allows you to be that step by step. You need to use words like first, second, finally. You'll say at the top something like, in regards to sampling, sampling is defined by such and such as, and you define it, right? And then you say, in terms of sampling, it is recommended that the researcher take a number of steps. Accordingly, the researcher took the following steps: first, second, finally, and so on throughout all the steps. Basically, you want every single step to be completely backed up by what your research manual says. If you use the information from the book, cite it, and that's what's expected. You might need, by the way, as a bonus, you might need to get a few research manuals, 2 or 3, so that way the people that are reading your dissertation know that you looked at multiple sources and decided that among all these sources, this was the way to go. Tammy asks, what is the best way to learn the process of giving narrative interviews? Tammy, I want to welcome you to the show, and I want to thank you for leaving me a question. People leave questions. The only way for me to provide any answers to you is if you leave questions, and Tammy was one of the brave souls that did so this last episode. So, Tammy, Fortunately, the answer to this question is quite similar to the previous question that I just answered, is that just like Hatham, you are going to go out and you're going to find research manuals that talk about the process of narrative interviews. For anyone listening and watching this show right now, whatever your methodology is, there is some book out there, in fact, probably a few books out there about how to conduct your type of research. So it's your job, Tammy, to go on Amazon.com or your favorite bookseller and get 3 or 4 books about your research methodology and look at what are the individual steps that need to go into to conducting this type of interview. And the bonus for everybody, the thing that every candidate misses 10 out of 10 times, is your job is not just to write an amazing chapter 3 that lists the steps of your interview according to your research manual, but additionally, you are required to go into the IRB application and follow those and list those steps too, most likely. But the thing that every candidate misses 10 out of 10 times is that your job is to create what's called an interview protocol. That is a script that you will use inside of your interviews in your research where you can actually say, researcher walks in the room, researcher reads this confidentiality statement, informed consent statement, presses record on the recording machine and says, and may I record you? And it basically is a script as if it was a play on a stage. What is the exact script that you will conduct with every single participant of your study? And what I love about this is that you get to write this in advance and you get to base it upon the great work of other people, because that's what dissertations are about, is about basing your work upon the great work of others and then citing those sources and then moving on. So either way, Tammy, what I'm trying to tell you is get some books and write yourself an amazing interview protocol. Jamila asks, how do you structure your literature review based upon the questions you are investigating? Jamila, welcome to the show. I want to say thank you for leaving me a question. We covered this a little bit last time in terms of discussing lit reviews, but what I want to say specifically about your question is there's this assumption in your question that the lit review is based upon the questions that you're investigating, and I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, that you're saying research questions. And that's not exactly the case. What your literature review is mostly defined by is an amazing purpose statement. Inside your purpose statement, you're going to be defining probably 2 areas of interest, 2 research topics, or 2, what should I say, 2 variables, I guess some people might say. That's not really the right term, but 2 variables that might be at play inside your purpose statement. Basically, you might have, what are the characteristics of top teachers in California in the United States in 2015 or something like this. It's a horrible purpose statement, but just to say, teachers is in there, right? And so that infers the educational system in California. So there would be a whole section about the educational system in California. That's the first piece. And then there's this whole other assumption about the best teachers. And so chances are we'd probably go more specific and talk about maybe their teaching strategies. So classroom methods, teaching strategies would be an entirely different category. So the first thing to say is that when you do a purpose statement, from the get-go, you're probably going to be defining your 2 top areas that you're going to cover in your lit review right there. Area 1, Area 2. It's in your purpose statement. Area 3 in your literature review, the 3rd section, the 3rd top category, is a combination of number 1 and number 2 usually. So for example, I said, educational system in California, and I said teaching strategies used or something like this. The 3rd section would probably be something like teaching strategies in the state of California. So notice how it's a combination of those 2. And the reason why is because there's probably a lot of research and information about the educational system in California. There's probably a lot of information about teaching strategies that goes outside of California. It's everywhere. And then finally, this final section is where you're bringing forth a lot of current research, maybe from the state of California. I'm just using California because it's my home state. I'm biased. And what research has been done in the state of California before, very similar to the topic that you've done. So, is a literature review structured because of your research questions? In my opinion, no. It's structured mostly by your purpose statement. But your research questions need to be sourced by your literature review. And what that means is is that at the end of each of those sections, you're going to be talking about what researchers are asking us to find out. And the way you do that is you go to the end of studies or the end of dissertations and you look for the recommendations for future research, and that is what fuels, first of all, justifies your study, justifies your purpose statement. You're showing that other researchers have asked you to do this type of research. And then finally, what you're doing is you're saying, look, this is something worth studying, and chances are those directly align with your research questions. So, step one, great purpose statement. Step two, figure out your research questions. And in the end, your literature review is mostly defined by the purpose statement. So start there. Everybody, I want to thank you for participating in episode 3. I need your questions. If you would like this experiment to continue, tell your friends and leave me some questions so I can answer them here live on the show. It's a pleasure. It's Monday. I love Monday. And if you like this video, subscribe. Listen to me in your car on the way to work. Play it to your children.